If 80% is already good to go for it. They put it into the market. Look at 2023, they installed 200 plus gigawatt. The year after, almost 280 gigawatt. Again, China is investing in humanoid robotics at the scale yet to be seen anywhere in the world.
Welcome to Energypreneurs, the podcast where solar power batteries and electric vehicles come together. I'm your host, Sohail Hasni. When we combine these technologies, something powerful happens. On this show, I speak with founders, engineers, and investors who are building this fantastic new energy system. Thank you for joining. Hi, good evening, Frank. I'm in Manila. Where are you?
I'm here in Taipei, in Taiwan.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, not far away. Maybe you tell a bit more about yourself. You've been working long time in China. That's what I know. Yes.
Well, basically, I started getting engaged with China in the late 90s for the first time. Basically, what we called to reach the second level of higher education. That means after I accomplished my apprenticeship to become industrial mechanic, I got enrolled at the university and started a combination of East Asian economies, Chinese language. And within my study, I focused very much on China's energy or power sector. And after graduation in the year 2002, I arrived with one suitcase in Beijing on behalf of the German Technical Cooperation Pact. We had a joint program, renewable energies in rural areas, pretty much focusing solar energy, because back then the Chinese government, they had this called the Brightness program. That means in off-grid areas, they installed solar PV systems, mainly as well small-scale hydro. We provided technical support as well, policy advisories, etc., etc. What was supposed to be a 3-year contract got extended by another 2 years, by another 3 years, and I worked for the EU. Then I stepped out of the development cooperation world, so to say, and founded my own company down in Hong Kong, providing advisory services. I stayed another 10 years until 2020, because when I left the so-called development cooperation world, China, in the meantime, has become, from a humble manufacturer, the number one manufacturer in the solar space. And then I thought, why leave now? And I never regretted this decision. And now, for the last 3.5 years, I'm now based here in Taiwan.
Obvious the question that comes up saying, how China made solar and batteries so cheap? I remember 2001, we were working there. One of my colleague, Edu Hassing, was doing a wind turbine project. I was in the team. And when we went there, I think many of the Chinese colleagues were telling us, it doesn't work, it's too expensive, this and that. And then today, of course, China is one of the top in wind energy also. So how did this happen in solar and battery? What's your take?
My take is very simple, the Brightness program. China itself invested a substantial amount of money into hardware to supply energy to people living in off-grid areas, because the grid extension was just way too expensive. The last few kilometers or 100 kilometers would have been so expensive, so off-grid solutions was the number one choice. And already back then, you had companies like Suntech or Trina or SunGrow. They got engaged at a very early stage in providing the hardware required for these off-grid installations. And then a colleague like a founder of Suntech, he returned from Australia after graduation, and driven by his entrepreneurial spirit, he could mobilize funding for the first 10 megawatt solar module production line. In late 2002, he got his company stock listed at the New York Stock Exchange. That's triggered a wave of other companies to follow. And then at the same time, back in my own home country in Germany, what started with the renewable energy law, or the feed-in tariff law, so to say, in April 2000, we back then were 50% of the global demand was actually taking place in Germany. And Chinese companies were very much keen in meeting this demand. And at the same time, another driver was, as well in the early 2000 years, that China initiated the so-called strategic emerging industry policy. So that means back then they have identified in total 7 such kind of industries, like high-end equipment manufacturing, chemical, energy, environmental protection, and of course, energy/renewable energy/solar PV. So they provided industrial guidance for the last 20 years and counting. A combination of all of that, basically demand at home for off-grid installations. Then one company got stock listed, so other companies followed suit, mobilizing funding or raising capital abroad, not at home. And then the industrial guidance from the ministry on top of it. So this combination of helped it and 24/7 working mode. I know a couple of Chinese colleagues, they had no private life, so to say. And I'm not sure if I would like the idea to have to be in their shoes. Definitely not. But look where they are today. They have been working hard. They were always subject to brutal competition. And innovation is always king and is key for their success. So a good number of reasons why the Chinese have made, and the Chinese colleagues are very good in upscaling in no time. And today you have a world-class supply chain ecosystem in a couple of clusters spread over a couple of provinces like in Zhejiang, in Jiangsu, in Anhui. So that all contributed that manufacturers, they could meet demand in no time at very good quality and very affordable prices. So that's my take why. And I hear all these comments, they have benefit from massive subsidies, etc., etc. That's one part of the story, and it's not the total story. There's much more to it, not only money provided by the government in various forms. They too were pretty much driven, and not to mention from another aspect, it was kind of at some point, Chinese companies or the government, so to say, they were tired of being called, we are the workshop of the world. Didn't go down so well, and combined with their own ambition to make progress, and not to mention they wanted to move ahead to develop new growth sectors, and renewables was part of it. Was one industry where they wanted to get rid of this older image manufacturing goods which were of questionable quality, and with clean tech products, it's clean, green, climate friendly. There's demand at home and abroad. You can check a couple of boxes, which has all contributed to the overall success of China's solar and battery industry, so to say, to this very day.
I had the opportunity to work in China or in Chinese project for 3.5 years between 2001 and maybe around sort of early 2004 or 5. What I have seen exactly as you mentioned, because it's a country run by engineers and their need to solve problems, not hide behind problem or hide behind excuses. Because my first task was, there was a big hydro project, Fujian Mianhutan projects. So there are a lot of complaint from World Bank. I used to work for Asian Development Bank. The resettlement hasn't taken place and a lot of consultant went. So I said, I went through the entire reservoir just to see how people have settled. So at the end of the day, when I was talking to the government saying, unbelievable, these people have amazing facilities, what people are complaining about. And they were saying, it's our people. We looked at it. Then we realized it makes sense to improve their livelihood because So you guys budgeted maybe 8 million. They ended up spending 5 times more. So obviously it looks, and when I came back and reported, people said, are you sure? I said, I went and saw. Because I like that approach of solving problem, which doesn't happen in most cases. People always look for excuses. Obviously, as you correctly mentioned, it got triggered by Spain giving a lot of subsidies, Germany, subsidies. There is a market. Someone had to meet those demands. They went and meet. But I'm curious, you mentioned the word off-grid a lot of times. Can you explain what it meant by off-grid? What size?
Back in the day, in the early 2000s, or actually in the late 90s, it started with that you had dozens of millions of people living in off-grid areas, far in West China. So that means in Gansu, in Qinghai, in Inner Mongolia, Tibet, Sichuan, you name it. And relocation was not an option. To extend the physical grid infrastructure was not an option as well, just prohibitively expensive. But they wanted to provide these people an incentive to stay on in these rural areas, and that was power. And so they deployed solar PV systems, so backed up with battery systems. So that means to have access to modern electricity and all the comfort. And to make this happen, the government initiated the Brightness program. started very early with small-scale wind turbines in Mongolia. Then they opted then for solar PV, which was just more reliable, in particular in daytime. And that's why they invested so much more in off-grid. Nowadays, don't ask me how many people are still living in off-grid areas. I don't think not so much, because the grid got extended over the decades. But back then, it was the only viable solution. And serious investment were required by the Chinese government. If they were drilling, we are not supposed to have people living according to a different standard of living. You here in the cities and over there in rural off-grid areas, not okay. So it was kind of the political mandate was to that all shall enjoy the same benefits of life or pleasures.
And Chinese scale are so different, right? If you go through a small city, they would say small city, which may be 5 million people. It's a very tiny, small city.
It's a small scale city. You always have to add 1 or 2 more zeros in order to reflect the reality. That is true. I was always surprised. Why do they build anything always so big in the first place? But you know what? In no time, if they would have built it smaller, they would have reached capacities. So they would have to add more capacity. So that's why they built it bigger in the first place. And yes, it may take them a year or 2, 3 years longer, but in the end, the capacity is required. So they never think small, always big. But the reality proved it was more than necessary. That's why if you look at how much China has deployed in terms of renewable energy technologies in the last 20 years, China is by far now the number one in terms of deployment, by far worldwide. Who would have thought of it 20 years ago when coal was the dominating source of energy and everyone was complaining about oh, so much coal and the air pollution and how many people will have to die early because of the bad air quality, etc., etc. But no, then pressure came from the public. They wanted to have fresher, cleaner air. They were shutting down coal-fired power plants. They made the fuel switch because at some point renewables were paying off, not only financially, as well for the well-being of the society. And what else is different? If you read Chinese, anywhere in the country, you see these huge billboards for safe energy, safe water, low carbon future. And you know, October 1st is the foundation of the People's Republic of China. And each year they have this kind of, it's like a carnival which pull across, and each and every time they have small wind turbines and solar panels on it. So that means in terms of awareness rising across the board and for many, many years. And people, they are very open and very eager to learn something new and apply new technologies. Like the digitalization nowadays in China is amazing, how much you can done with your mobile only. And there too, awareness rising has been a part ever since for the last 10, 15 years that renewables is the future, that's good for us, etc., etc. And the people embrace it and support it.
That innovation is so much into that psyche. Once I remember 2002 or 1, I was given as a gift, the government saying you can try it out. What's this? It has a USB look like. That was a flash drive. I still have it somewhere. It's a skeleton. We were still using floppy disk that time. And I said, that's interesting. How does it work? And wow.
They are very open in pushing the boundaries. And the acceptance of new technologies is way much better compared to my home country in Germany. We are slow adopters. And it is the German nature, and actually I shouldn't say this, but it's our nature to be always very skeptical towards something which is new, innovative, and brings along whatever changes. We kill so many ideas, innovative ideas in the beginning. And once we have realized after 1 or 2 demonstration projects with years of delay, hey, actually, that's not bad. But by then we already have missed the train. Not so the Chinese. And another example from German mentality perspective is we are looking always at 100% risk-free solution. It takes an awful long time. And yes, by then we have 100% highly engineered product. Not so the Chinese. If 80% is already good to go for it. They put it into the market. And I give you one example, let's say inverters. For instance, inverter manufacturers and module manufacturers, They team up with project developers. They say, it is not yet a product ready for the market, but we're pretty much sure it is. So if you use them, put them out in the field, and please provide and share the field data with us, the manufacturer. So that means, yes, it's an 80% ready to go product. But then once the first batch of products is put into the field, and then they can use this data in order to optimize the design, to get rid of some bugs and some design flaws. At the end of the day, that product is way earlier ready for mass production compared to our approach, who is going through another demonstration and another demonstration project and another one. So the time for any product ready for the market or mass production is so much shorter compared to our, let's say, old German traditional approach, I may say. That's because in China, nobody has time. Now it's prime time and we have to go for it. If not me, there are 5 other companies, they do it in no time, and then I'm falling behind. And that has been ever since. You can apply this to the solar industry as well. And if you're now looking at the 15th 5-year plan being around the corner, it's supposed to be launched in early March during the National People's Congress. Innovation is on top of the agenda as well in the clean tech sector. So here, innovation is key and is king, because that ensures competitiveness of the Chinese companies at home and in the global context.
I've just been thinking, you have been living there for so long, so you must see it in firsthand. What do they teach at school? How this psyche, where does this psyche of risk-taking comes in? There must be something different, no?
It's more overall, risk appetite is different. It's much greater, I would say. They have balls, these guys. They don't shy away from it. Then, of course, the pressure. Labor market, and whether now you're being replaced by robots or by your colleague, etc., doesn't matter. There's always pressure to deliver. It's a brutal working environment. I'm sure you have heard about this 996 from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., 6 days a week. This is what Jack Ma from Alibaba was being quoted at some point a few years ago, because the younger generation, they question him, if I work every day from 9 to 9, 6 days a week, what's left for my life? And he was saying, otherwise no progress. He put it as simple as that. It's not for the psyche, it's more the pressure to deliver. If you don't constantly deliver, you may fall behind and you're no longer part of the game. With 1.4 billion people, pressure is always there. And I have Chinese colleagues in their late 60s, early 70s. Of course, they're already officially retired, but they embrace this concept of lifelong learning. They keep pace with the development. They learn, they're always up to date. They acquire new knowledge, or new apps are coming out and they put it in and they fit it into their workflow, etc., etc. That really amazes me. So it's more kind of this that they have to deliver otherwise, because it's a brutal and working environment. And if you are not keeping pace, you may fall behind. And competition, no mercy. But it's not the psyche, it's more the circumstances.
I can fully agree to that, because similar population pressure, competitive pressure is there in India or any other highly populated country. But what gives you the need to perform, right? I've seen one thing many years ago. I was in a sort of Chinese policy discussion for 4 or 5 days in Tiananmen Square. So we are sitting there, and there's 2 gentlemen came in, literally holding a stick, and they were just listening. Didn't say anything for 3 or 4 days. Just listening, they're sitting. And then at the end of the 4th day, these 2 gentlemen summarized their takeaway. I was just sort of saying, oh my God, this is pre-AI. How? So they were not only observing, they were not asking question, interrupting anyone, but just listening in. And then they summarized what did they learn and how might it help them. I was really, really amazed at how I think that's where you are coming from, that willingness to innovate, willingness to learn.
They're willing to embrace anything which is new and which is offering a competitive edge, they go for. They don't ask too many questions. They think, is it good for me? What kind of benefit does it may have? So the pros are more than the cons, go for it. And no offense to your Indian heritage, if you talk about 1.4 billion people.
And I'm not from India originally. No.
to Indian colleagues, I put it this way, because I've been to India a good number of times for business and private reasons. One difference I notice is the Chinese are driven by ambition, much more than the Indian colleagues, and they are not subject to religion. So that is not part of the equation, but it's the ambition which drives them. And many of these guys, they want to achieve something on their own. They want to be their own boss. They're driven by this entrepreneurial spirit. And that's why nowadays, like in the solar space, you see still companies being founded by guys who used to work for someone else. But now after 10, 15, 20 years in that company, say, well, now I have accumulated so much knowledge and know-how, good network of people. I'm good that I can mobilize funding. Now I do it on my own. So that's true, kind of a motivation, which I would love to see, at least in my own home country nowadays, but a little bit too complacent once in a while.
I think that's a global. So tell us, you are also in another country, which is also highly techy country. So what you see happening in the next 5-7 years, the way solar is coming everywhere, batteries, China is almost 100% EV in many ways. What is left? Where things are going?
Well, the physical limits have yet to be reached. The ball is rolling. Efficiency levels are being pushed from 25.5, 25.6, 126, you name it. There's still room for more. So it's not the end of the story. So nowadays, because silver has become so expensive, nowadays silver makes up 1/3 of the total cost of a solar module. So that means the next type of modules are zero silver free. So there's no longer silver being used in the production of solar panels. Not to mention the scope of application is widening. We used to install it on the ground or on roofs, whether it's with a commercial industrial rooftop or solar home system, doesn't matter, or off-grid, as we discussed earlier. But then came agriculture PV came into the picture, or floating solar PV. Yeah? So now we see solar PV combined with seawater desalination technologies, particularly on these island countries who are in need of it. So we see that the scope of solar-based application is still widening, and there are still new things coming up. Now we combine solar for power with solar thermal for heating purposes in one system design, or that you use solar for actually on ADB's headquarter roof, you have a solar system which is extracting water out of the ambient.
We had a small pilot.
Of course, adoption of solar will just keep going. We have markets nowadays where we see some level of saturation. We still have markets which are catching up a lot or have still a lot of potential to catch up or to deploy much more solar in the future. Who would have thought that last year the second largest importer would be Pakistan, just next door to India, to China, a country with plus 200 million people. And the grid not so reliable, so people have to look for own solutions. And across Africa as well, and Southeast Asia, not to mention South America, etc., etc. So in terms of technology, innovation will keep its momentum. What we may see more trade headwinds, because a good number of countries and regions around the world, they don't feel comfortable with China being the sole global supplier of solar panels along the entire value chain, polysilicon, wafer cells, and modules. China occupies on average more than 80%, and in the wafer segment, almost 100%. So this kind of external supply dependency makes a good number of countries around the world feel rather uncomfortable. India is one example. Europe is slow. The European Commission's solar energy strategy was released in May 2022. Now, 4 years later, it's just the opposite happened. More companies disappeared and more companies went bankrupt instead of building up again production capacities in order to be in the position to meet to some extent the domestic or the European domestic demand. But that has yet to happen. So, or the US is trying to do it with the Inflation Reduction Act they have initiated. But now with Donald Trump in the White House, things are no longer set in stone. But so production will keep on increasing around the world. Demand is picking up less compared to the previous years, because in the past few years, global demand was pretty much driven by China. It was the number one market. If you look at 2023, they installed a 200 plus gigawatt. The year after, almost 280, and last year, more than 300 gigawatt in one single year. A few years ago, that was even more than the total global demand in a single year. So no, I'm very positive. Solar is good, and solar will stay, and prices will keep on falling. Quality is unquestionably good, and the prices are so affordable nowadays. So no, I'm very positive when it comes to the adoption, continuous deployment of solar across the world in the future.
Solar panel used to be a few $100, $1,000 once upon a time. Now, 9 cents a watt, right? How cheap can this be? No?
I know. But the margins are very slim nowadays. That is a self-inflicted problem. The Chinese companies, they just went overboard. It was a race to who adds more production capacities in a shorter time. And I know amongst Chinese colleagues, when they were about to announce that they will add another X amount of gigawatt production capacity, they thought if we announce something below 10, so no double-digit figure, it would be kind of embarrassment. I know of countries they would love to see companies announcing, let's say, a 10 gigawatt module factory, and then in China it's considered being an embarrassment. And the industry consolidation, I've been talking about this for the last 10 plus years. It never happened. Yes, some company disappeared, but you and I, we hardly know their names, and it doesn't change the momentum. The overcapacities today we have, China is home to 2.5 times of the global demand of module production capacities. And demand is not projected to accelerate in the years to come. It's rather the opposite. Demand right now on a global scale could rather be flatter.
Prices, whether it goes down or not, it's fantastic where it is. But the thing that intrigues me, and I want your views on, as prices of solar drops, and then the battery prices have come down quite significantly, also cell level, almost, I hear $30 or something, whatever the price is. You put those two together, and then you have your electric vehicle and all this zero marginal cost coming in, autonomous car running around, which makes almost transport almost zero. So in this world of sort of opportunity, everything is free, almost non-existent price, you just pay a capacity and you have, what does the world looks like? What is the motivation then that this competition that you're mentioning? China, everybody wants to be the best.
The National Development and Reform Commission announced that every newly built data center in China has to consume 80% or has to meet its power demand 80% by green power. So that means there is a demand.
So how will the society work out? Because China is really few years ahead of everyone else in terms of technology adoption, electric vehicles, solar power, batteries, you name it. What other countries are planning, you already see that in China, right?
Yes.
So how will the society behave when all these things become free almost in an abundant world? You have any views?
If something is for free, people start to waste. That's human nature.
How much you're going to waste?
But usually Chinese, if I'm looking at China in particular, they don't like the idea that something's being wasted or giving away for free. Nowadays, because one example, or the latest example is that the fixed feed-in tariff was cancelled since June 1st last year. So prior to that, the fixed feed-in tariff was guaranteed, almost guaranteed, for at least 10 years in principle, and for another years were subject to negotiations. Now no more. Everything is subject to market mechanisms. So here, nowadays, more the fittest of the fittest will survive. And I know of colleagues, they were running some numbers for how long companies can keep burning cash until they run out of money and no more money, and then they will have to disappear from the market. But that has yet to happen. No, it's more about that the bottleneck in China is now grid capacities. There are grid constraints. So even in the case of China, and that takes time and requires a significant investment. But overall, from the lessons learned, that is something where the world can learn from. And where the society is heading, in the case of China, they embrace it. If this is the future, if gives us some more, another little piece of competitive edge, they go for it. And we just follow their example. So if it's almost for free, it reminds me of one small anecdote in Zhejiang a few years ago. The local government seriously proposed or floated the idea, oh, you want to use the wind and the sunshine in order to generate power and sell it to the grid, and we are supposed to pay for it? That is not for free, my friends. Of course, an uproar went through the industry, and in no time, this kind of idea disappeared. But it was an interesting attempt back then. It's hard to tell if things will just getting cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. The more we adopt, the better for the global climate. That is a no-brainer. The more we embrace and turn away from fossil fuel, the better. And the more countries follow that example, China will most likely be the very first country, what you call an electro state. So it's very true. And with all that comes along as well challenges, of course. Batteries are not necessarily always it is a solution, but not the solution. But at the end of the day, what is paramount is energy security. You are supposed to supply power 24/7, 365 days a year, and that's it. Non-negotiable. And renewables are part of it. So that's why today coal is still a backbone. But even the coal power sector in China is bleeding money. The average utilization hours of a coal-fired power plant is below 50%. And they still keep on adding gigawatts and gigawatts of new coal-fired power plants. And you wonder why. Of course, I know of a couple of reasons, but still, no, and having experienced myself this transition or transformation from a very much fossil fuel-based power sector towards a more renewable power-based driven sector is amazing in just 20 years.
So that's what I was thinking, that you are in that forefront. So what trends do you see that maybe the rest of the world is underestimate, which might come from China? Do you see any trend in the next 10 years?
Grid infrastructure, that is already the bottleneck. If you look at Europe, by the time you have final capacities is limited, build out of newer grid capacities is taking an awful lot of time to get approvals, licenses, that you can kick off construction, and it takes forever. The European Commission has acknowledged that there is a deficit. There's a severe shortage.
But how do we change? What you're seeing in China that can be copied?
There is one significant upscaling in investment driven by, in this case, that basically European companies, they team up together and go for it together in no time. Because here you don't have time to wait, definitely not. Storage would be, of course, is part of the solution too. Europe, I'm not so familiar with pump storage, how much potential is being untapped and can be utilized in future. Even China is running out of sites at some point in future. Then, of course, the infrastructure required for electric vehicles. You want to make sure you can drive from A to B and not having to worry that if your battery is blinking red and then there is no charging station nearby, not okay. It's what can learn the world from. It's not rocket science at the end of the day. It's simply basically that affordable, reliable, clean, safe, etc. And of course the grid. So that's pretty much it.
Let me rephrase then. You've been living in China for 20 plus years and you are in Taiwan now, right? How has your life trajectory changed in terms of behavior, in terms of thinking? Has it influenced you?
Oh, definitely. Oh, yeah, me too. I got rid of my old German, let's say, mentality that everything has to be 100% perfect before I embark on something new. No, now let's make an early evaluation. Okay, it seems to work, so go for it. There's something new. Let's take a closer look, because time is not on my side. You don't have time to waste. Definitely not. This has potential. Good. Let's take a closer look. Then a higher risk appetite. So here to myself, not that I'm now a high risk lover. No, not like this as well. But not playing safe all the time. Okay, there's something that seems to be okay, acceptable, go for it. Why not? And of course, what I mentioned earlier, this concept of lifelong learning. Now I'm 60 years old. That is not the end. There's so much more to come. And as I mentioned earlier, I have a couple of Chinese colleagues. They really live up to that concept, because I met a couple of guys back home in Germany, and for them, they're looking towards retirement, and that's the end of the story. And I wonder, guys, cannot be. There is still so much more which is coming along our way. Now it's AI is all over the place. To give you one example. And no. So me too. I'm picking up new ideas, learn something new. And that's certainly which has grown on me over the years being on the ground in China. Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah. Yeah. It also had a positive impact on myself. Oh yeah.
The way the technology has changed from basic SLR now to this autofocus, multifocus. And when you look at it saying, wow, how things have changed.
And in particular, the last 5, 6, 8 years, this kind of the innovation just kept on increasing. How often or the frequency, how new products are being launched, similar to solar every year. If you go to, let's say, international exhibitions nowadays, let it be in Munich, the Intersolar or the SNEC in Shanghai, it is amazing how many new products being launched on these particular days and throughout the year. This kind of innovation cycle is just getting short and short and short. Whether it's larger capacities, higher efficiency, or it's double glass for the solar panels, for instance. And same goes with lenses or the camera bodies or the iPhone. Look at our mobile. Same here. In the early days, it used to be a brick type of mobile phone, and today it's just as small than the palm of our hand.
This magic transformation that has happened in photography because of digital photography and mobile phone merging with sort of camera. Now you take a mobile phone, is it a camera or phone? A lot of times it is. People buy mobile phone for camera. And that changed because of ease of technology, right? So right now with AI, what we are seeing, that ease of knowledge, anything you want to do, you can ask your AI thing, how do I do it, right? You can pick up something and say, what is this? Give me the technical anything you want, can go and learn, right?
Yeah.
How do you think that is going to change our society, like the way photography is changed? Everyone is a photographer now, right?
Over the weekend, I met with my son and he bought himself the latest iPhone. It has 4 integrated small cameras in one single iPhone. I wonder, I have an older, a 7-year-old older iPhone version, only one camera integrated. He has 4. I wonder, excuse me? And then he told me, this one is for that purpose and this one is for that purpose. Why? And AI will just accelerate the whole process, whether it's in the world of photography or in the world of renewable energies. Like if I'm thinking about AI in the context of solar, for instance, maintenance. And here the Chinese have another advantage. They have access to millions and trillions of data from operational systems. So preemptive maintenance, just as one example, with all the data they have, and they can feed the AI model AI and they detect when or where might be some technologies maybe arise. Excellent. Or drones. Drones is another very fancy piece of equipment, so to say. And that's true. Again, China is investing in humanoid robotics at the scale yet to be seen anywhere in the world. Or here, the robot taxis. Hello, I don't see it anywhere. Or what they call the low altitude transportation. Or there's something, you're just maybe below 1,000 meter altitude or low altitude. Or
flying device or something, yes.
So I wonder, us in Germany at least, this is a no-go.
This is for drone delivery?
For instance, drone delivery, and for, let's say, you need medicine in one hospital and it needs to be flying across the city in no time because traffic is a no-go. These are this kind of purposes you can use it for. But here too, who would have thought about a few years ago about drone technology? But DJI is the number one supplier.
Has done well. I recently upgraded. I had a DJI Spark many years ago, 5 years ago. I destroyed it, and then I bought one of these DJI Nano. You don't need anything. You can just control by hand. Move your hand like a zoom out on an iPhone and it goes away. I put your hand, it lands, and you said, follow me, and you run, it will follow you.
I saw that one. It's kind of, wow. I like this kind of, there are new ideas and they think there is a potential and put it to work. And they may find a partner who deploys that kind of new devices. And in no time, sooner or later, demand is picking up and they scale up production capacities as well. So, here, this kind of still amazes me, this kind of openness towards new technologies. Yeah, like cars. In the early days, when then Chinese EV manufacturers came out with their own brands or with their own cars, within the cockpit, you had a screen from one side to the other side, all over the view. And I know of a couple of German car engineers or German car designers. I thought, our customers, they don't favor this. They don't like, we like it old style, traditional design. No, but designs and what people like, their tastes and what they favor has changed over the years. So it is basically now that in regardless of what kind of technology, China or Chinese customers are setting the trends, and we are supposed to follow, yeah, or adopt it at a later stage, so to say. Why not?
People are using drones for fishing. I was amazed to see you literally in Australia, in Western Australia, you pick up and then you take very far away and you can see, and then you drop and then they reel it back. So you don't have to need a boat to go far away. So as technology becomes cheap, as technology becomes easy to access and affordable and all that, a lot of use case will come up that we have never thought of, no?
Definitely. And AI will be a main contributor to this. I'm sure in no time you will wonder about yourself, who would have ever thought about such kind of app technology or application? And if then end customers see the benefit of it, well, demand is picking up as well. So that is kind of, well, China, officially speaking, still considers themselves as a developing country. And they don't want to fall in this kind of middle income trap like other countries. And they still have ambition by 2049, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There's long-term goals, or being carbon neutral by 2060, for instance. So they have to keep on innovating, have to keep on creating new technologies, which stimulates new demand, and they want to be in front of it. Remember, in 2015, they initiated the Made in China 2025 policy. In what kind of industries they want to be independent, and in what kind of industries they want to be less dependent on foreign supply, et cetera, et cetera. Now in India, we use the same, Make in India, same policies. So, oh yeah, in terms of technology and what might come along in no time, I'm sure you and I will be very much surprised.
So you believe now, living in China for so many years, that maybe the whole world can run on solar plus batteries, no? The way the world is headed, if everyone adopts it properly, no?
At least to a larger extent compared to previous times, that is true. Like in my home country, Germany, every year they conduct a public survey. What kind of future energy supply system you would favor most? Solar always tops. For the last 40 years plus, we have been promoting renewables, and it starts in the kindergarten. So who wants to go back? And the impact, the negative impact of climate change can be seen anywhere in the world. Wherever I go and with whoever I talk about this, everyone is telling you the sun is getting more aggressive. You have floodings are increasing, and the severity, frequency, it's getting more colder, more rainfall, droughts. Who would have thought we have droughts in Thousand Falls or Portugal in Spain? That was unthinkable until a few years ago. So obviously it is not a hoax, the climate change, like other guys put it. And we have to do our part. And at my end, for many years, I felt bad because I was constantly traveling, flying a lot, whether within China, in the Asian region, or worldwide. But at the end of the day, I have a clear consciousness. I was promoting something good, solar energy. So I have no remorses, definitely not. I did my part. And if I see nowadays, younger generation, fossil fuels are not an option. And if you have this, who is it, Friday for Future or extinct, what's called the extinct generation, et cetera, the young generations that go for, raise your voice. At the end of the day, if you're looking down the road and us keep on burning fossil fuels, is a no-go. So for many of these young generation, renewables is the way to go. And I support that. I'm very positive, actually, despite, let's say, the current geopolitical changes we all experience.
I mean, it's very hard to let go large businesses, fossil fuel industries everywhere. So it will take a while, but I'm still thinking that what has happened in the last 20 years is quite extraordinary if you go back to 2001, you would not have imagined this much
No,
changes in
no,
quarter of a century. Autonomous vehicle, you name it, everything. Now, is there anything else you want to highlight?
no. Just to add on this point, 20 years ago, none of us would have thought when 20 years down the road, we see this amount of, let's say, of deployment of whether it's wind or solar, et cetera, or batteries. And sometimes I go back to my old presentations, what kind of forecast I had was so wrong, so bloody wrong. And that it has become such a mainstream in the public eye, in the public media. And it's heartening to see that still every year, if the eye is publishing their annual report, that the global average temperature has increased by that amount and is now beyond this famous 1.5%, et cetera, et cetera. It's kind of, oh man, I thought we are doing a lot, but apparently not enough. And you wonder how comes. And still, the challenge will be, yes, some countries around the world, they had an early start. That's why they can enjoy a very high level of life. While other countries have still a lot of potential to catch up, and they have all the right to do so and to catch up. But yes, it will imply a massive challenge for all of us. And if we would all embrace, let's say, the lifestyle of certain countries, we would have to have more than one Earth in order to meet the demands. That's why I have the utmost respect of these guys who meet every year at these conferences in order to discuss global climate change. And yes, and each and every time the outcome is kind of warm, maybe, but that's politics. And that's just brutal politics at the end of the day. So one can only hope that at some point there will be the big full switch towards renewables across the board and no more so much oil and gas, et cetera, and it's so only renewables.
Let's hope so.
The pros and cons.
Let's hope so, because renewable energy is not only cheap, it makes sense in all ways, right? Nothing else makes sense.
It ensures the survival of all of us in the long run. At least it contributes to the survival of mankind, if you talk about big picture.
Thank you so much, Frank, for your time. Really
Pleasure,
appreciate that.
Zohail. Pleasure.
How can people reach you? What's the best way to find you?
Or on LinkedIn, they can find me. On LinkedIn, that's very easy. Like you found myself as well.
Thank you.
Very much. Take care. Bye. Huh?
Thank you for listening to Energypreneurs. Let's work together electrifying everything. This podcast is available in audio form on your favorite platforms and in video on YouTube. Please feel free to subscribe to our channel, and we always appreciate your comments.